hi everybody. David Fogel, CEO of the Symphonina Foundation, and back with you for another Symphonina Foundation podcast. Well, if this were a hockey game, it would be a hat trick. The last three guests, including this one now, Callen Clarke today, are from Oklahoma. What are the odds? We had Andrea Soltani on last Wednesday with the Soltani Music Group. We had Grammy winner Kit Wakely last Friday. And now Callen Clarke from Edmond, Oklahoma. Everything is Oklahoma, and as they say, it's okay. Callen, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great.
Callen is a symphonic orchestral composer, both with the Western style and the Middle Eastern style, and has had numerous compositions performed, including some at the Oklahoma Mozart Festival. And we want to talk a little bit about how Callen got into composing and performing and even writing novels too, I think. And also he gets the treat to play with his family. When I was growing up, I got the treat of playing with my dad and mom too, and even my brother as well. So let's start wherever you want, Callen. How did you get into it all?
Well, here's the thing. I didn't come from a musician family, right? Like my dad didn't play in the orchestra. He was an engineer. My mom was a homemaker. Nobody in my family had the ambition to do music. But my brother was going to college. He was 7 years older than me. And he started bringing home these cassette tapes. For those of you who are really old, we used to have cassette tapes, and it was just a dark gray cassette tape, and we had the little stereo, the little playback, and he handed me a tape one day. He said, "This is Shostakovich," and I honestly had no idea what it was,
Mm.
So I put it in. He had given me one of his old stereos. I put it in, and there was this little tune that I liked. It was very exciting. It sounded like Star Wars. If you'd asked me when I was 10 years old, what does it sound like? I would say, well, it sounds like Star Wars. And I liked that little bit. It was about 4 minutes long, right? It was very short and very vivid. And I liked that. I didn't like the rest of it. There was an hour of music on there, but that was the only bit I liked. But remember, this is a cassette tape. So I couldn't just select the track, and I wasn't sure exactly where it was. It was somewhere in the middle of the tape. So I used to sit in my mom's kitchen and build plastic models, and I'd have that little stereo going. And I couldn't find that thing. It was so short and it was in the middle. I couldn't find it. So I had to let the whole thing play in order to get to that 5 minutes that I liked, you know.
Yep.
So I would listen to it over and over, and I would just ignore the rest and wait for that exciting bit. But as time went on, I found that, you know, that bit before the bit I like, that's okay too. And that bit right after the bit that I like, that's okay too. And so my attention span and my awareness and my appreciation of Shostakovich's 10th Symphony, which I still to this day think's probably the greatest 20th century symphony, gradually expanded until, to my astonishment, one day, I discovered that I actually liked the whole piece of music from beginning to end.
Funny how that
And I
works.
listened to it over and over and over again. And there was no class, there was no teacher. Nobody was saying, hey, you need to listen to this music, this is important. But my parents discovered that I liked orchestral music. And so they took me, so we'd go to church and they'd introduce me to their friends and stuff. And they would say, oh, yes, Neil, that's my first name. Neil is into symphonies. And, they would look down at me and they would say, oh, Beethoven? And I would say, no, Shostakovich. And of course, this is the 80s. It's still the Cold War. And they would sort of frown
Oh yeah.
and they would say, Beethoven, you should listen to Beethoven. But
Well, they weren't wrong, Callen. That's okay. But
yeah, and I did eventually develop, and it didn't take long. I did eventually develop an appreciation for Beethoven. I expanded out from the 10th Symphony. I got hold of the 11th, which had been featured in Carl Sagan's Cosmos, and then the 12th, which wasn't featured in anything, but I loved it. And eventually I heard all of Shostakovich's symphonies, and then I discovered other symphonists. And then I conceived this idea, this is the music that moves me more than anything else. This music has a power to take me places that nothing else can take me to. I want to do that. I want to make that, I want to create that kind of experience for other people. So, yeah.
so how did you get going with that then? Once you decided that, must have been in the late 80s or the 90s, whenever that was.
Yeah, well,
What did you get going to do?
concurrently with, the cassette tape method of musical exposure, I was taking piano lessons with just a wonderful pianist. She's kind of an icon of the scene. She's passed away now, but her name was Ginny Campbell. And I remember going to my piano lesson one day. She's really the one. I was coming to my piano lesson. I walked in the door. She had this awesome stereo. Her house was filled with things from Europe because she traveled to Europe all the time. And she was playing this big piece of music on this big, awesome stereo. And I said, "Wow, this sounds amazing." And she said, "Yeah, this is Beethoven's Second Symphony." And I said, I've never heard anything like this, you know." And she said, "Oh, you'll write one day." She just said, I mean, I was a 10-year-old kid.
Mm.
10-year-old kid. I could barely play a minuet at that point. And she said, "You'll write a symphony one day." And boy, did that light a spark, you know. So yeah. So how did I get into actually doing it? I went to college as a composition major, OCU, started in 1989, graduated with a degree. Astonishingly, having graduated with my bachelor's degree, nobody came to me and said, "Will you write me a symphony?" They didn't come knocking down my door. I
Mm.
always had that ambition. I started a couple big pieces, never really got far because there wasn't much opportunity. But then years later, I ran into a violinist named Kyle Dillingham, who was local here, and I needed him for a recording project I was working on, need a violin solo, and I just confessed to him. I said, "I've always wanted to write music for orchestra." And he said, "I've always wanted to play with an orchestra." And that started this partnership in 2007, me and Kyle Dillingham, and we called it the Symphonic Revival. And from 2007 to about 2014 or 15, I wrote music for him, and it was violin with orchestra. And I did some other things too, because that opened doors. He had connections with the orchestras, and I had the ability to write this music. And man, it just went from premiere to premiere, and it was fantastic. That's how I got going.
We talked a little bit before we got on the podcast here that you also get the opportunity now to play with your daughters. So let's talk a little bit about how you've expanded it within your own family too.
Yeah. So separate from Kyle and the symphonic revival, I took a trip in 1998 to the Holy Land. I was doing music at a church and they had this package deal. Before I had any kids, me and my wife went. And while I was there, I discovered this instrument called the oud, which is the Arabic lute. And
That's
man, oh
O
man,
U O
David,
U D, right?
OUD.
Yeah.
The
Okay.
first time I heard that thing, oh my gosh, it was just like staring into a well of colors that just had no end, you know. I was just absolutely mesmerized. I bought one and I took it home and I eventually learned how to play it and I started gigging with people around town playing, you know, what they called back then world music. I mean, we played Arabic music, we
Yeah.
also played Jewish music, and then I composed music because I'm a composer. I composed music that combined the two. So I fell in love with the oud and fell in love with Middle Eastern music. You know, as a composer, you're always looking for new dimensions and new perspectives on music. And Middle Eastern music just gave me that. You know,
Hmm.
what if you just throw out harmony, but what if you add percussion, almost like rock music, but not quite like rock music? And what if you bring in quarter tones? And what if you emphasize melody and rhythm? And you just don't have harmony or you don't have very much of it. What does that do? Well, and that was some amazing experiences there. I traveled to the Middle East. I played with musicians there. I played around the States. And so I had a band. We had a band called Noor, and it went really well for a number of years. But you know, people people drop out. You know, they have different things. Unless you
Yeah.
get four people together that are committed as a career to doing something, bands are going to have kind of an expiration date. You know.
Yeah.
So as the band kind of devolved, my daughters were getting older, and my oldest daughter, Faith, there came a point when I had booked a gig with a wonderful musician from Colombia, but he went home for the holidays and he wasn't going to get back in time for the gig. And I asked my oldest daughter, Faith, if she'd fill in on percussion, and she had to learn these percussion rhythms, difficult rhythms, 7/8, 10/8, you know,
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
just a matter of weeks. And she did it, and we did the gig, and it just went really well. So Faith was playing with me, my oldest daughter. She started when she was about 13. As she got older, my second daughter, Hope, said, "Daddy, I want to play. Dad, I want to play too. Faith gets to play. Can I play?"
Of course.
And I thought, okay, okay, okay. Hope wants to play. You know, I don't want to say no to my daughter. I don't want to discourage her. Be positive, be a good dad. So I thought, well, we'll put Hope on percussion. We'll let Faith play percussion and violin, and we'll just see how things go. And I'll give Hope easy stuff that won't be too challenging for her. Well, Hope is now a multi-instrumentalist. She
Hmm.
is in our family, she is the premier percussionist, and she plays unbelievably well.
It's funny
Complex
how
rhythm.
things like that go, huh?
Yeah, she also
Um,
plays the flute, the classical Western flute. She plays
okay.
the Arabic classical flute, which is a reed flute that has holes in it. Very,
Okay.
very difficult to play. She plays it. She plays the Persian santur, and she plays every species of hand percussion that exists in the Middle East. And then my third daughter, Elizabeth, same thing happened. We were gigging at a local cafe, and she said, I want to come and play. And she would sit in and play 3 songs, and then she'd go sit down. But gradually, she did more and more. And now she's learning percussion, or has learned percussion. We've recorded albums together. And like I said, I'm planning these concerti that are going to be full blown. I mean, this isn't kid stuff at all. It's full blown orchestral music with my daughters. My youngest daughter, Grace, is only 11, but she's already starting to pick this stuff up too, just like her big sisters.
It's
So
wonderful. Yeah. Well, it'll be many, many years of joy for you and for those who get to listen too. So that's all great.
I hope so. They're my daughters. I can't just, they're gonna be doing this as long as they want to do it and not any longer.
As
So
long as no one comes along to break up the band, Callen.
that's right.
We don't want that. Hey, we were talking a little bit too about the state of symphonic music and your viewpoint on it, and I would like to have you share that viewpoint with everybody. So the floor is yours.
Yeah. I I got an opportunity this last winter in February to premiere a new piece with a Baroque orchestra. And I've been playing the oud now for over 20 years. And about 4 years ago, I got into lute. And that connected me with the early music scene here in Oklahoma. I mean, you're astonished that there's an orchestral scene here. There's an early music scene here, which is even more amazing. And we have lute players, harpsichord players, Baroque flute, Baroque strings. It's awesome. But I was just astonished how many people are getting into art music. I go on YouTube and I watch people like Rick Beato, and he's talking about the state of the music industry, the pop music industry,
Mhm.
and how packaged it is, and how 9 songwriters, and
Yep.
one of them is the singer, and she may not even have done anything, and blah 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 blah.
Right.
And how the old classic rock is people are so much more into that than they are into what's coming out now. Even my daughters and even their friends. I mean, my daughters, okay, my daughters, I have influenced them maybe, but it's not just me and it's not just them. Their friends are into Toto, Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd, the Beatles, stuff from way back when. But there are people who not only do they want to go back and look at the music of the past, they want to go way further than rock music. People that are actually exploring. And David, I don't think there's an industry of people that are pushing this in any kind of a big way. It really seems to be grassroots and organic. You go on YouTube and you see somebody who's 20 years old talking about Shostakovich's symphonies or Prokofiev's biography or Stravinsky or whatever. It's amazing. And it's almost like we're reaching this place in the culture where people as a whole are beginning to realize the more something is pushed at me, the more contrived it is. And what can I get? Right? Like if I'm going to buy a cup of coffee, I don't want to go to a machine and have it spit something into a styrofoam cup. I don't want that to be my coffee. I want to go to a place that has nice decor. I want to choose all the ingredients. I want to find the bean that I really like, that's my particular flavor. And I think they're the same way about music. And the thing is that if you begin that endeavor, if you enter into art, music, Western civilization, that stuff, and you just give it a little bit of a chance, I mean, you immediately discover, wow, there's something here. I mean, this isn't just they didn't just throw this together. There is real substance here. And once you get a hold of that, I mean, there's no going back from that.
Yeah.
If you discover something new and it is credible and it has substance, it's going to have you for life, right? I mean, that's been my experience.
Yeah, you remind me something, on last week on Monday, I had the privilege really, of interviewing Melissa Manchester. She just
Yeah,
composed her first orchestral composition that was performed on Saturday at Corning, New York.
yeah,
And one of the things that she said there was in the human experience, the heart longs for melody.
Oh yeah.
And I think that's very true. And it gets kind of diluted a little. I don't want to be one who would dump all over popular music or any music really. But yeah, I think, that's for me. I told her, definitely I'm a melody guy. And I think it shows too for us in the Symphonina Foundation. And maybe this is echoing what you're just saying, which is, in the Symphonina format, it's about tonal music with melody, three or four movements, melodic movements. You should be able to hum what the melodies are when you're done listening, and they can be in all
Yeah.
sorts of different styles. That's not the issue,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
but it has to be able to sing a song to you, and that's
Yeah.
part of the thing, and being able to, whether you're going off of that cassette tape or an 8-track tape before that, or whatever
Yeah.
whatever it might have been, to be able to keep that song in your head and be able to recognize it again later or embellish it or whatever it is, whether you're the listener or the composer, participant, whatever it might be. I think those are all very important things in helping to spread the joy of symphonic music to young audiences around the world, as is our mission and motto here at the Symphonina Foundation. So I totally resonate with what you're saying, but I have to say, I'm going to go to a symphony concert, San Diego Symphony, later this year, and I'm going to be looking around, and I'm certainly very hopeful that the situation is going to be different than it was for me 7 years ago when I went, and I was pretty much the youngest one in the audience when I was 54, and that's when I got the idea. Hey, we need to fit the attention span of everybody, really, not just young people, but older
Yeah.
people too. All of our attention spans are getting shorter and shorter as our phone continues to distract us. We just get trained to have short attention spans. So,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
was the impetus behind it. But I definitely resonate with what you're saying, and it gives us all hope. It certainly gives me hope that symphonic music from the old times will have a renewal, a renaissance, and also that we can help contribute to symphonic music for the next 200 years.
Yeah. See, I don't think that symphonic music is actually old. You know what I mean? I mean, it has its date, it has its origin in Europe 200 years ago, whatever the case may be.
Yeah,
The
300, whatever it
orchestra,
is. Yeah, right.
I mean, I've traveled to other countries. I've played with musicians from all over the world, and I can tell you the orchestra is a universal institution. It's a global institution. Like if you go to China, there are orchestras. If you go to the Middle East, they play Beethoven, they play Bach, they play right alongside the Arabic music that they're creating, and they combine the two. There's something about the sound of the orchestra that transcends culture and transcends genre and transcends continents and languages. It really does seem to be something. I think the orchestra as a an instrument is the most expressive of all musical instruments collectively. And I think that's what gives its appeal. I think musicians, composers from whatever culture, I mean, it doesn't matter, the Philippines, Australia, Vietnam, when they hear the orchestra, they hear that potential for expression and it grabs them. And we think of the orchestra as a European thing, and it began that way. Although, in a sense, every traditional culture has its own large ensembles. But
Yeah.
now you can't say that anymore. You can't say the orchestra is some kind of a European thing. It's a universal thing, I think.
No, I agree with that. Absolutely. In fact, one of the things another thing we do at the Symphonina Foundation, we have our own International Symphonina Orchestra, as I know you're aware of, and we
Yeah,
endeavor to have people from all over the planet, whether they're in
yeah,
Europe
absolutely.
or Africa or Australia or the Philippines, Indonesia, China, wherever they might be, contributing their part. And I think it is 100% aligned with what you're saying. It really is a mechanism for communicating in music that transcends all of the cultures. It just depends upon what kind of music you're performing. But we
Right.
just talking with my friend Justin Chart, who's a universal artist, jazz saxophone player, and he's just done an
Yeah,
orchestral thing with Peter Safaris. So jazz and orchestra go together. Everything in orchestra goes together.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah. It really does. It can be combined with anything, really. And to go back with what you were saying a little bit ago about melody, I just think about what is melody? I mean, if you think about it, it's such a mysterious thing, right? Because Mussorgsky said that melody was based on the speech patterns. And I think there's a lot of validity to that. I think you can hear, if you listen to Russian song and then you listen to Mussorgsky, you can definitely hear it. And if you listen to Arabic, the way people speak classical Arabic and then you listen to Arabic music, there's definitely a connection there. But that doesn't explain how I can hear a composition from someone who was born in Cairo in the 1930s and I can hear their music and it just latches on to me. There's a guy named Riyad Sumbati, Egyptian composer, and he composed a song called Elbi Shaquli Ya Jamil. It's a song for Kulthum, the greatest Arabic musician of the 20th century. And it is so awesome. It is one of my favorite pieces of music, and I cannot explain. It just brings home to me, how is it that this melody can grab me this way when I'm not even from this culture?
Yeah.
It's a mysterious thing, it really is. It's kind of awesome.
Well, three cheers for melody around here, Callen. We
Yeah,
could probably talk about this another 10 hours, but it's a
yeah,
podcast, so we
yeah.
have to go. What are you working on currently? What should we be aware of, and what would you like us to look out for?
I'm working on a multimedia project called Trace. And Trace is a historical novel in 3 volumes about 3 boys that become best friends in the Muslim city of Granada just before its fall in 1492. One of them is Jewish, one of them is Muslim, and one of them is Catholic. And they're all there in Granada and they become best friends. And we see through their eyes, the eyes of these 3 boys, this tremendous epical event when the last Muslim kingdom of Spain surrendered to Castile and Aragon. But I just wanted to, there's so much going on in our culture right now. I don't want to go too far down that, but I just wanted to write a story about people that are able to be friends in a time of turmoil. So anyway, so there's a novel. It's called Trace. Concurrent with the novel and inspired by, what inspired the novel are these 3 concerti that I've written as companions to the novel. And they combine Middle Eastern instruments with Western chamber orchestra. And I use my experience as a composer to kind of bring the Middle Eastern world together with the Western world and to combine them in interesting and evocative ways. And so that's what I've been working on
Sounds great. What's your timeline for
the
that,
last
Callen? When should we start to get
the
on the edge of
first
our seat about it?
yeah, the first 2 novels are out and they're available on Kindle on Amazon, but I'm going to be later this year I'm going to be making them available in print.
Okay,
The first 2 novels, hopefully all 3 novels will be available in print on Amazon by the end of the year.
wonderful.
We wrote and premiered the first concerto in 2018 with a local orchestra here, and I'm currently composing the second 2 concerti, and we're going to be recording those next year. My daughters and I, and some chamber orchestra we still have yet to find.
Wonderful. We
If you
wish
want
you
to follow us,
we wish you the yeah. Let's how can people follow you or get in touch with you?
yeah. So I'm on Facebook, Callen Clarke on Facebook, and I have several pages. But if you just do a search for Callen Clarke, you'll find me. I also have a YouTube channel, Callen Clarke, and that's where I'm going to do most of my promoting on YouTube, but also on Facebook and also on Instagram. So, yeah.
Very, very good. And that's Clark with an E on the end of it, everybody. And I also
Yes,
wanted to,
Irish spelling.
yeah, I wanted to come back to something. It's not so much that I'm astonished that there's great symphony music in Oklahoma. That's not the thing. The thing is that there are so many great symphonic people in Oklahoma. And what's great is all of you are just so wonderful. I mean,
Oh,
it's just a delight to be. We had Christina Giacone and Patrick Conlon on. Chris Prather's part of our Symphonina team, and Tess Remy Schumacher, of course. And I'm going to start to forget
oh
people,
yeah.
and I apologize for that. But my goodness, Patty Drennan and everybody. I mean, it's just a delight with each one of you. So thank you for being
Awesome.
so delightful.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on, David. I really, it's great to connect with you, and I think the Symphonina Foundation is really it's a fantastic thing, to promote symphonic music in a new generation, in a new context, in new media formats. I just, I can't say enough good about that whole thing. I just think it's awesome.
Thank you so much, Cal. We're going to listen to some more of your music on the way out, your great music on the way out. And we
Thank
wish
you.
you all the best. If there's anything else we can do to be of help to you, just let us know.
Thanks, David. Great to talk to you.